Hello everyone, I'm Jessica Littles and I'll be going over my X-treme Makeover for Organizational and Systems Leadership Spring 2021. We will be covering miscommunication in workplace, theme versus cultures, patterns of relating and patterns of meaning, being together and making meaning, power dynamics, ways of talking, listening, being. Then we'll be later changing the story and discussing innovation as transformational conversation. Through this presentation, the audience will be introduced in the complexity of organizational conversations. The audience will be presented with a telling of miscommunication on the psychiatric unit and how oversight can lead to big consequences. The learner will be able to identify concepts of organizational conversations, identify key vocabulary, discuss pattern meaning and pattern relating, discuss the complexity of relational being, talking, listening, and mindfulness, and later discuss innovation and organizational dynamics. Miscommunication in the workplace. At shift change, while working on adult adolescent psychiatric unit as a charge nurse, there was a crisis intervention that occurred with one of the patients. As usual, there was a lack of staff to help assist with the code. The floor had only 3 nurses and 2 techs. During this time, there was also a patient being constantly monitored and a patient care tech rounding on all the other 12 patients on the unit. During this crisis, the charge nurse assigned a tech that was rounding to help with a 5-person manual hold. The tech quickly discarded the rounding sheet and assisted with the crisis. With all the chaos from the other patient on the unit, I did not think to ask the tech if she was actually rounding at the time. The tech proceeded to help with the 5-person manual hold, which caused them to miss their 15-minute round. Following the intervention, a briefing was held in the nurse's station. The rounding tech quickly left out, stating she only had 5 minutes left to round on all the patients. In confusion, I asked the other staff who was rounding at the time. Another nurse stated the tech who assisted with the crisis was supposed to be rounding. The nurse also stated the tech was a new and had issues with other charge nurses in the past. Another nurse stated a code R was not called, and after further investigation from management, they only assigned 3 nurses and 3 techs to work the floor. After speaking with the manager, the event was classified as a hit and miss, and an occurrence report was filed. In the event, there were several lines of miscommunication that could have been avoided. With the unit being chaotic and the staff assignment being poorly communicated, a bigger event could have occurred. So some events that we had in this scenario was miscommunication by the charge nurse by not listing daily assignments, code R not being called, tech was not properly oriented about the 5-person manual hold and rounding at the same time, and patient care tech not clear and stating they was on rounding duty. So let's go over to organizational themes. When we talk and discuss about the organizational themes, we're talking about issues that could occur in the organization, such as increased patient acuity, staffing shortages, and intimidation. In this scenario, there is an increase in patient acuity. Usually when our psychiatric unit gets chaotic, we may have more aggression appeared on the unit compared to depression. Staffing shortage. As you notice, I stated there was only 2 techs in the beginning of the story, but management on their list had there were supposed to be 3 techs instead of 2. And intimidation. I do feel as if the tech, if she felt like she had more power in that situation, she would have easily addressed and said, hey, I cannot help you right now. I'm rounding. Then we want to talk about the organization as a conversation as far as culture. Some of the water cooler conversations or cafeteria conversations that are addressed within my organization is nurses or staff just feeling powerless, overlooked, and overworked and underpaid. Moving on, now we'll be discussing the meaning of relating and meaning of pattern within an organization. When we talk about patterns of relating, we're talking about how people interact with each other. Can involve habits such as emails versus face-to-face, and can involve rituals such as attendance forms or manager leading meetings. So that's important. How do we interact with our coworkers or individuals within this organization? And then patterns of meaning. It's talks specifically about things within your organization. It involves the mission and vision that identifies an organization from another. Is one for profit versus one being for more patient safety. So that is important too when you're looking into changing and starting a new language within your organization. So again, habits and rituals create understanding, and immersion relates patterns of meaning and patterns relating which are relevant in practice. So you want to make sure you're living in that moment to moment interaction at work. And with every interaction and conversation, a new opportunity emerges. And within human value-based relating, organizations can forever push for future change. Complex relational being together and making meaning. Me's gesturing responses theory details the importance of creating meaning through new language. Meaning comes from experience of conversation that occurs in the present. Our choices and intentions are shaped by past experiences, and meaning making is a social construction. When we go back to our scenario, and discuss the tech not being able to say, hey, I'm running out of time. That was caused from a past experience that she had with another charge nurse. So this time she felt that she would receive that same negative feedback that she got from that past conversation. And that past conversation created new meaning for her in the present. So she was more timid and more intimidated this time around when making a decision on if she should help and not help with that crisis intervention. And moving on to the power dynamics. When we talk about power dynamics, we're discussing power relationships forming groups or patterns where else some are included or excluded. For example, if people within the organization feel like they have some power, then they'll feel more equal and less powerless. And going back to the scenario, at that time, the tech may have felt powerless. Like if she did stick up for herself, would that have been overlooked? Or would she still got in trouble for not helping with that 5-person manual hold? And so we have to be mindful of that when we're talking about new languages too. And those water cooler and sidebar conversations. Then we're moving over to living in the present. So organizations are changing day to day and learning from past conversations and behaviors. The future is undetermined. We as humans within an organization, we can always change. We aren't machines. Machines are programmed to do the same thing over and over. And if you want something to be changed, you can change in a machine. But with people, we can always set new goals, and we are forever changing within a human-based organization. And sometimes that can be a challenge, especially when you're trying to plan. And plans can at times create conflicts, such as a 5-year versus reality. Example, a manager implements plan of no crisis interventions for 1 week and staff will receive bonus pay. But in reality, there has already been 2 crisis interventions. Staff now feels inadequate and frustrated. Moving forward. Ways of talking, listening, and being. Ways of talking. Conversations present opportunity for reinforcing values, norms, and change. How do we speak to people? How intentional are we with our language? Skilled leaders use language to persuade, motivate, and control. People have strong communication skills, are good conversationalists. These individuals build trust, show compassion, provide stability, and create hope. In what way, with me being a charge nurse or even in a manager standpoint, how can we have motivated that conversation to be different so people do feel comfortable with talking with us or telling us yes or no, or even just providing that stability within the workplace. Ways of listening, being able to collaborate between the listener and the responding. On the charge nurse standpoint, in that scenario, how can I have listened to my peers and gave feedback and received feedback? And being mindful, energy of being aware and awake in the present moment. To be mindful is to be present and connected with those around you with what you are doing. So, reflecting back to the scenario, everybody could have stopped, paused, and been in that moment, and even just being aware of how we talk to each other. Maybe the tech felt that I was intimidating to her because everything was happening so quickly, or maybe the other staff didn't feel as comfortable talking to me as well. So let's go on and change the narrative. So some of the biggest key points we could have done to change the scenario. During a crisis, out of charge nurse assigned a tech that was running to help with a 5-person manual hold. The tech responded, I am not able to help at this time. I would like to, but I am rounding. That shows power dynamic and the talking pattern. Even with the chaos, I paused and focused on what was happening in the moment. I was being mindful. I then delegated the 5-person positions to the available staff. The tech proceeded to rounding on her other patients on the unit. Following the crisis intervention, a briefing was held in the nurses station, and during this briefing, the rounding tech states all the other patients on the unit were secure while the crisis was taking place. As a charge nurse, I listened to the staff regarding the current challenges and praised them on what went right during the crisis. And with relating and meaning, giving the staff time to also give insightful feedback of what can be done differently for the next crisis intervention. So, moving forward when innovation is transformational conversation. When we talk about innovation with transformational conversation, we are talking about both and thinking can enable innovation. Both and the statement recognizes multiple insights as useful and valuable. People continue to ask questions and understand the meaning of languages. And new language equals new patterns in the workplace, which push great leaders to say yes to the mess. The both and statements recognizes the need and value of holding multiple perspectives useful and challenges old ways. Leaders also say yes to this mess that other leaders will not. Change the narrative conclusion. So throughout this presentation, we will being aware of the frustration by the staff and past experiences could help future staff responses. As a leader, it is important to be aware of your surroundings and knowing the culture and pattern of relating throughout the unit. Being aware of bad habits that exist during crisis interventions, for example, delegating to unassigned staff, could help us push the initiative for change within our unit and ultimately our organization. This is my presentation. References by Davidson, Kroon, and Raff. Thank you and have a great day.